It's
You're live.
Nicola. Oh, righty. Let me just check that I'm live on the page, although it doesn't always. Da-da-dum, dun-dun-dun. We are doing the launch party for my podcast, the Business Intuition Podcast. Thank you, girls, for being here with me today for the party. I'd like first to introduce myself briefly. So, my name is Ange de Lumière. I know I'm on my page, but there might be some new people watching. I'm a business intuition mentor. And I want to first explain to you how I got from being a business international lawyer to being a business intuition mentor, because it's been quite a journey. Um, so it all started in 1986 in Paris, my hometown, on a September evening after coming back from a placement. I was doing a placement as a lawyer in a legal department, and I think I might have had my paycheck that day, because I was like, I'm just going to go and spend a bit of money. And I'm not a handbag or shoe girl. I'm a book and music girl. So I decided I was going to go to Rue de Rennes, which has an institution. And I don't know if any of you know Paris a little bit, but it's like the temple for books and music. It's called La Fnac. So I encourage you to go and visit it if you go to Paris. It's amazing, Rue de Rennes. So I was like, yes, I'm going to do. So I was on the RER, because the company where I worked was on the outskirts of Paris. So I took the RER B, the blue one, if you've ever been in Paris, changed to go onto the right metro line. And when when the station, Montparnasse station came up, I changed my mind. I suddenly changed my mind. I didn't want to go shopping at all. It was like this complete contrast, and I felt super tired, and it didn't make sense. And in a way, it's good that I was on my own, because I'm sure if I was with a girlfriend or someone I knew, they would have talked me out of it and say, oh, come on, don't be silly. Why aren't you going shopping? You know, we had those plans. You're being irrational. Have you heard these things said to you before, girls on the call? Yeah. So I was on my own. And so I was able to indulge that feeling. And that literally saved my life, because at the exact time I was going to go, and I don't say this to scare people, but just to show the power of intuition. At that exact moment at 5:20, and you can check it on Wikipedia, there's a link that explains the entire bomb attempt. 7 people were killed, 50 people were injured at the exact spot where I had planned to go. And yet I didn't credit my intuition. I didn't even know what intuition was. I just thought I was lucky. But on some level, I think it shook me a little bit. And then there was another instance that was a little bit less dramatic, luckily, and then another one, and then another one. And that's all these small steps that we can ignore, or that we can let open up our minds. And so I want to honor this event, because it was big, and it was transformational. And it's interesting, because I come from a family where you get sucked into the fear and the worry, and they watch the news all the time, that sort of thing. I don't watch news anymore, but I didn't tip into the fear. Oh my God, I could have died. I was like, I was meant to go there. What's going on here? Maybe I wasn't meant to die at this moment in time. What happened here? So right. So that's how I started my journey of being from a really left brain lawyer to being who I am today, which is integrating logic and magic. That's how I put it. So I'm going to talk to you about my mission, because it's very important to understand my mission, to understand why this podcast is so important, why this party, this launch party, is so dear to my heart. And it's that I'm on a mission to put intuition on the school curriculum, from primary school all the way to university. And I want to acknowledge Nicola here, because I know she has to go at the half hour. But she shared in the interview I had with her the fact that when was it your PhD that you were doing, or your master's? Your master's, and she had all this intuition information coming through her that made her paper incredibly powerful, and yet half of it was discarded by the academics because she couldn't back it up with research. And so that's super important for me, that the Nicholas of the future, have this knowledge that even if they can't prove it and there's no evidence. They are the new evidence, and that should be taken into account. That intuition is not to be discarded. But there's one thing that is particularly important for me to bring intuition into primary schools, is that I realized through an interview with one of you beautiful ladies, because a lot of you have had me on your pages, that I think it was with you, Emma, wasn't it? That the reason why I'm so passionate about intuition for children is that it is my intuition that actually protected me from the lusty uncles in my family. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the detail because that's maybe a story for another day, but I always knew that I shouldn't be, like, for example, sunbathing near them when we were on holiday, because we had a holiday house with everybody. It was a wonderful ambience, but I knew there was a couple of uncles that it was danger. Whenever I came near them, I was like, mm-mm. And I'm not going to say name here because privacy is important, but there's a couple of girls my age in my family that weren't so lucky. And some of them, actually, one of them actually got raped by one of my uncles. So it was very traumatic. And I am so grateful that I had this intuition. And I feel that if children could be taught to trust their intuition and their gut feeling, that would really help them be safer in the world. Because we all know, sorry to kind of milk this subject a little bit, but we all know that the danger comes usually from within the family rather than from complete strangers. So that's my bit of why I'm so passionate. But of course, I'm not going to be able to get it into schools and university right away. And that's why I'm actually embracing all my fellow entrepreneurs and business owners, because I know they're the ones who have the open mind, who have done a ton of self-development and who are ready to embrace intuition and, back up that revolution that I want to create. So first, I want to thank you, ladies, for being on my podcast. It's been an absolute honor to have you. And the people who are going to listen to the podcast as well, because this is why I'm so passionate about putting this on the new and noteworthy category on Apple Podcast. It's not because of me. I don't even have my name on the podcast name. I don't have my face. Most coaches, it's the Ange de Lumière podcast or this. And I'm not saying it's wrong at all. I think it's beautiful and it's wonderful that people should acknowledge, themselves, their business, that they face their business. But for me, it's a much, 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 much bigger purpose. And I believe that, we've had the agricultural revolution, we've had the industrial revolution, we have the technology revolution. The next revolution is going to be the intuition revolution. I believe that with every bone in my body. Because think of the world, how the world will be when everybody's intuitive. First, we would function at the highest of our capacity instead of half of it. We would be able to benefit from the wisdom of every ancestor, every genius, every business owner, every teacher that's ever walked the planet. And they are still interested in what's happening on Earth and wanting to help us with their knowledge to make Earth a better place. And I'm just getting goosebumps when I'm talking about this, because it is absolutely possible for heaven to come onto Earth. And I feel that intuition is going to be the conduit for this. So I just want to actually honor intuition as the main guest on this party and on this podcast. And I also want to honor each one of you for having listened to the call of intuition. It hasn't been easy, has it? We were all from very mainstream backgrounds. I was a lawyer, Emma was a physiotherapist and a lecturer, Nicola was a marketer, Andrea was a teacher, Katie was a vet nurse, Chantal, you were from the corporate world as well, although I've never asked you exactly what you were doing in the corporate world, I'm sorry, but we were just ordinary girls. Well, sort of, I think we're special, but so, and this is the theme of this podcast. This is for ordinary people. It's not for psychics. It's not for the ones who were chosen by the intuition or the psychic fairy at birth. And she had her little wand and said, "You, my child, will be able to see everything." No, we're just mainstream girls, and we want to help everyone understand that we are born intuitive. Every single one of us. Can you give me a hell yes or a heaven yes? I prefer heaven yes personally. Yeah. So we're celebrating intuition today. I'm so glad that you're with me. I'm going to check if there's anybody watching on the live on my page. Oh, I should really share this video onto my group. Girls, if you can share it on your social media, I'm not saying that you have to, but that would be wonderful. So I have never done that, to share a live into a group. Can I do that? Okay, so what I'm going to do, Nicola, whilst I share, please come in and introduce yourself. And I've asked each one of my guests to share the one book, and I know which book it is, but I'm not going to say it, that has actually opened your mind to something different what you learned in school and university, you know, or whatever, wherever it is that you got your knowledge from. Nicola, are you happy to do that and introduce yourself as well? Okay, let's do that.
Hi, ladies, and thank you, Ange, for having us on your party. Thanks to everyone who's watching. My name's Nick. Excuse me, it's early here, and I've got a bit of a frog in my throat. The book, yeah. So, as Ange described, the first half of my life was very corporate-y, and here we are, all of us as entrepreneurs, and bringing intuition into our journey. And that pivotal moment, I think, where I really started to discover intuition, started whilst I was still in the corporate world. And I had this amazing, amazing boss, Carolyn Wilson. She's an American lady. And she was a program director, and she offered me a book. And she wrote this wonderful message on the front cover. And it was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And I loved that book, and just that whole very symbolic journey that the character goes on, and going full circle to come back to where they are, just to actually discover, you know, where that golden formula was all along, and it was right there, and see things in a new light. And that one book just opened this door to discovering more books, lots of books on spirituality, etc. And I explained to Ange that while this side of my reading, and I was 26 at the time, so I was still relatively young, and 24 years ago. And this side of my thirst for knowledge and what I was learning and how I was growing was happening over here. And my career and everything I took to work was happening over here. And I kept things into very kind of different boxes, really. Kept that all in a very neat box. So it wasn't until later in my entrepreneurial career that things started, you know, that I loved what you said, Ange, logic and magic started to blend. And I could see the power of bringing both in. So that's where that all started for me, on that one pivotal book.
It's an amazing book. I love it so much. I've read it so many times. And I remember when it came out in France, in French, it was just phenomenal.
And I saw some of the other ladies nodding. I think it's a relatively well-known book, isn't it? Yeah.
And it's quite simple. And it's about, you know, knowing that the treasure's within you, which is exactly what we're talking about here, isn't it? We have the wisdom within. We don't have to look. We don't have to go to India in an ashram to, you know, deepen our spirituality and our intuition. It's all here. And Andrea, you talk about that a lot, don't you?
Yeah, I guess so. That's the ultimate thing, is that really our truth is found within. And when we actually create the space from the external world, and that's when we can hear much more clearly and feel the signs, see the signs, hear the signs, however each individual's intuition works. So it's interesting when you said the book though, Ange, because I would say that I recognized that I was intuitive before I actually knew that I was, in terms of, like, my book kind of backed up what I sort of knew, I guess. And when you shared your story of it being quite a big thing, I think a lot of the times it needs to be a big thing so that we sit up and listen. because that was the ultimate thing for me, was that I had always been labeled a worrier as a child, whereas now I know I was just a deep thinker and a deep feeler, and probably felt a lot more than what my logical family and very, sort of routine and structured family sort of went with. But the way that I recognized that I wasn't just worrying about something was the fact that I had a very deep inner knowing at the time that my first husband, I felt like he would pass away, and I felt like he would die in a car accident, because I had this sense of knowing that he was connected to his uncle in a way that I couldn't explain, more so than the blood relationship, that there was something else that connected the two of those people together. And I never really had the words to be able to describe it to anyone, nor the courage to do that. And I that did come true. And the reason that the connection was that my husband would die on the same intersection as his uncle, but just around 20 years apart. And so it was such a like crazy time, but almost like I knew that they were connected, and I just didn't know how to explain it. And the minute that I heard that it was the same intersection, I was just like, that's not something that a logical, rational mind knows. That's something that a soul senses. And so that's where I stopped thinking of myself as a worrier, and recognizing that maybe I had an innate ability to sense things. And so the book, I guess, came a few years later. I'd already taken myself on this journey of what if we do have the ability to connect, and we are connected in such a way that we have these knowings. And so the book that I would go to that sort of reinforced the power was The Universe Has Your Back, in terms of the signs, looking externally, I guess, to reinforce that internal. But I have always, like, my truth has always been that the knowing is inside of us, and that's where we sense it from. And mine's in my gut. Like, my gut will just, and then I followed the human design. If anybody's listening, or any of you ladies, I'm sure everybody knows human design and gene keys and things like that. So as a human design generator, my solar plexus is my sort of center, and I can feel that. Whether I listen to it or not is a different story, but I can feel it and know these things. So, and I think that's been probably my biggest challenge. Is, I don't know about you ladies, whether you can back this up, but you can sense the knowing and then not trust it. It's like just being able to hold into that trust of, I just know this to be true. So,
oh, Andrea, thank you for sharing that. Your vulnerability as well. You have had such a difficult path, and yet I'm always in awe of how peaceful you seem, and where you've got to with everything you've been through.
Thank you. Yeah, I do have a beautiful life on the back of that, on the back of that. And I think that definitely comes down from that innate knowing that even if it doesn't feel like it, everything is working out in some way.
I also love that you mentioned anxiety or worrying, because I was absolutely labeled as the worry kid, but I knew things were happening and coming, and nobody ever said to me afterwards, oh, you did say that, you knew it was coming. They just discarded me as this party pooper. And so I learned to just shut up. For example, I'm going to give you an example. I knew Brexit was going to happen from the moment go. And so I started being agitated, wanting to get the British citizenship, which I couldn't get because I didn't meet the criteria. It's quite a high criteria. I tried to get my ex-husband to get the kids on it so that they could get their British citizenship. And he literally laughed at me. It's never going to happen. Brexit is never going to happen. Are you crazy? And where are we today? So I was absolutely labeled as the woman, and as a mum as well, it's something that sticks to you. I think that sticky tar, and it's really awful to be labeled a worry mum, when really you know your child better than anyone else, and you often have these insights that, you know, that it's thanks to my worry, so to speak, that I got all my children diagnosed with autism. And God knows how much I've had flack about it. I even had a teacher in primary school, that was my son's teacher, who told me to my face when he was being assessed that I was mollycoddling him and that he was actually lazy and arrogant. And I was like, you gotta be joking. And when he changed school, I went to the, SEND department, and I broke down in tears when I had a chat with them. So it's very real. It is very real, that worry. People, or don't be silly, or you're making things up, or so we've all had to some point a rebukement. Is it rebukement the word, or about our intuition, and especially as women, being labeled as the hysteric, the whatever it is. Why are you getting so worried? There's nothing going on, and then the car hits you, and you're like, I told you. And then nobody wants to say, of course you knew. Yeah. So thank you for saying that, Andrea. I think that's going to help so many listeners, especially intuitive women, but also maybe intuitive men, sensitive men. I want to acknowledge them here, because we all have that intuition. It's not a privilege for women. It's also, my husband is incredibly intuitive. We used to, when we were just still dating, online dating, I would answer his text before he actually pressed the button, and vice versa. It was just like this crazy thing. And yet he doesn't recognize himself as intuitive. That's the crazy thing too. It's just so interesting. Right. So I want Chantal, Katie, and Emma to come forward. So who would like to come first? Chantal, I'm going to pick you. Just because I need to pick someone.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Nicola and Andrea, too, because it's actually, Andrea, you've triggered something in me too about intuition that I hadn't even thought of sharing, because my story with Ange was more about how to use intuition in my business and opening me up in a whole different way and not being so linear about how I was thinking. But when I think back of my life, because of the family dynamics I was brought up in, violence, you become aware of things. And it was only when I was doing my Reiki mastership a few years ago where she helped me see it as a positive rather than as a negative, because I was highly sensitive to things. I could walk in a room and feel it. So it never even occurred to me that I was intuitive. It was just part of my life, and I could sense things, and it was just there. So what I'm finding interesting now, as I'm hearing us all talk, it's like, well, it's been like that for me for years. So I don't understand why we're making this thing so big, but I get it, because I had to look at it in a different way. And I think where, for me, my first big one was with a client, but the second one was when my father died. So coming back to what you're saying with intuition, because I took it as normal. 3 weeks before he's died, he appeared. No, my father was French. My granny didn't speak English, but she clearly came to me in English announcing her death. She's going to die on her own in June, and I'll give you all my wisdom. So I thought, and then tell your father, who was a Catholic, who I thought, oh my God, why would I tell Dad that? Anyhow, I did tell
Catholic
Dad
dad here too.
So you get that. But in fact, now I'm realizing all these years later, since his death, he was more than I thought. But yeah, so anyhow, it made sense because Granny was on her own. But fortunately for me, my mother and my brother understood who I was. So I did share it with them. And I'm still going to cry even after 22 years ago, Dad died. I'm still going to cry because when my brother phoned me, he knew he was anxious to tell me because it was my dad. He'd used my grandma as a conduit to announce his death. And it was 3 weeks before he died, because as you ladies will be there's no time frame. So when they said June, I didn't know if it was that June or the June later or June or whatever. All I can think of was at the time, that's when I triggered into PTSD, which I'll come back to in a moment. But I can remember thinking, thank God it was the 8th of June, not the 30th. These are the little things that you think about. So there was that. And then the whole trip, we went over he died in Germany, to see my granny in France, then went to England to his family. So we had this huge thing happening. He was with me the whole time and kept giving me messages, and to my brother in the room. And my brother, considering he's an engineer, fortunately done Reiki 1. So that was my big story. So that I kept going with that. However, when I lost my intuition was after a car accident, 10 years after Dad died, that really triggered me big time into PTSD. And only realizing, and just recently, how scrambled I had become. I could only focus on my body. I didn't understand, I just couldn't connect that. So I lost trust and faith in everything, and intuition didn't even come into it. So my lovely journey has been coming back and working with Ange from a point of a business point of view, because I'd always worked with it with clients and that point of view, but it never occurred to me to actually look at it as a business, how to use it in my business and to support myself in the decision making I had. And it's been really lovely to see my intuition coming back in every possible way. So I'm not coming just from that striving, doing, masculine linear that kept me surviving and living and what, because then I had a nervous breakdown because I hadn't been in this other beautiful side of me that was rich with femininity and creativity and softness and gentleness. And to now be able to bring that in with my clients and in my business has just opened up this whole new world that is just exquisite and magnificent. It's just something, why wouldn't we all want to have that in our lives, in whichever way we want to have that? So I feel very blessed that I'm sitting here with you, Ange, and with everyone else, ladies, because I just think it's a gift that we've received from Ange, from each other, from wherever, to be able to give back out again and showing how beautiful it is to be here, to have, I feel I've got a completeness in my life that I haven't ever really had, you know, because I was so fragmented in everything, but it's all brought me to this one beautiful place where I have this beautiful container, which is now for me the masculine, but then the beautiful feminine in the middle where I can create and be, so it holds that space. And when you mention books, I was thinking, oh my God, a bit like Emma, I won't take you into my other room or this one here, because I have that many books and sarongs and scarves, you know, but I also have them on my Kindle as well, so you can't see all those as well. But the one that really pops to mind, apart from many of them, is When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. That was my life changer. She teaches you the Buddhist way of meditation. This is how my teacher taught me, insight meditation, where she takes you really, they take you into the body to really feel where your pain is, and then uses all sorts of interesting techniques and ways to come out of it. And I realized by clearing myself of my heaviness, negativity, depression, all that sort of stuff, has opened me to allow the intuition to come back in and create a beautiful balance. And then the other book that I only read just recently was If Women Rose Rooted by Sharon Blackie. That was another one that just went, oh my God, nature, being the older woman, and just excitement. It's just excitement that I can be 58 and not be invisible, that I can remain invisible, but it's up to me to remain invisible, to remain visible. And I suppose where Ange, my story came in was that Ange, we used my intuition to tune into my niche, which is about being women without children. And because I never spoke about that, we don't talk about it. And then we even niched last week, which I'm still getting my head around, is women without children, but also the trauma that we've had in our lives. So that's sort of the portal to bring women in to be able to work with trauma, whatever that might be. So it sounds heavy, but like Andrew, it's not. I've got a good life. And that's what I want to show women, is the good life that we can all have. It's not just specific to us, it's for everyone. And that's what I love. So thank you, ladies. It was wonderful.
Thank you, Chantal. That was wonderful too. Thank you for sharing. Emma?
If can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to miss out on Emma and Katie's talks. I have to run my son to catch the college bus, and I wasn't able to join the later party. So I'm really sorry I could only stay for the first half hour. It was lovely to meet you all, and thanks for letting me pop on, Ange, for the time that I could.
It's been a blessing to have you for that half hour, and thank you so much for coming.
Lovely to meet you, ladies. Bye.
Thanks, Nick. It's nice to meet you too. So thank you. Thanks, Ange. Thanks for having me here. And hello, everybody.
So now it's the Australian connection. I'm the only one in the UK.
Love love it. So I'm Emma Turton. I'm a medical intuitive and the founder and director of Medical Intuition School, but my background is science. And so I was a very intuitive, very sensitive child, was the too sensitive, you know, you got to harden up, get your head out of the clouds and your feet on the ground kid, that one. And I learned to squash it down as hard as I could. And I was very intuitive, very tapped in right through my teens, and then realized I needed to be very conventional. I went into a science degree. I did a Bachelor of Science Physiotherapy, and in the health world, particularly in physiotherapy, if anybody else is a physio, you might relate as well, but in the health world and in particular physio, they're very much about an evidence base. So evidence-based practice, everything needs to be very scientific, very cut and dry. They laugh at anything spiritual. And it was, I had to really fully put a lid on it. And I went completely the other way as though it had never been there. And you know, hid my crystals and my rings and all of that stuff. And so I was very much in the world of science. I loved science. I always did as a kid. I was a complete nerd. Loved science, loved maths. That was me. And it was really, you know, I went on this journey myself, I had a healing crisis myself, and realized I didn't have all the answers, and started to dig deeper and deeper and deeper, and uncovered the missing piece, which was the missing piece for all of the people that I'd worked with, and so many of my clients, the ones who couldn't recover, couldn't heal, no matter what we did physically, even, you know, working in a hospital as a team of medical practitioners, the ones that you couldn't seem to understand why they kept getting worse. Oh, my hat fell off. No, not my party hat. I'm going to tell it. It's not going to stay there. But yeah, and so, you know, I realized the missing piece was that I, you know, that soul connection, that aspect of them that influences their emotions, their beliefs, their fears, their traumas, their bigger picture, you know, why they're here, and the choices they've made in their life that may not have actually been in alignment with who they are. And that was the missing piece in health, because it's what changed my whole world. All of the diagnoses and medication and all of the stuff I had to take, and I was told I'd have all these things for life, and I don't anymore, because I healed that aspect, and everything else fell into place because of that. And in the process, I cracked open and I cracked open my intuition as well. But when you were asking about the book, you know, there's so many. I've got so many. This isn't the only bookcase. I've got one over there, and I've got about 6 out there. But the book, I think, that really accelerated the whole process for me, I think because of my scientific background, was Greg Braden's The Divine Matrix. And for me, that gave me evidence. That gave me the reasons why, and the scientific experiments, and the understanding of the quantum mechanics, because I taught biomechanics at university. It was something that it really spoke to me. And he is a geologist. He's a very highly qualified scientist. He's not, you know, speaking some of the language and getting it all wrong. He knows his stuff. And I went and saw him live, and he was the first person who taught me how to do heart coherence and heart-body coherence, which is really that expanding in the heart and connecting into the heart, and then using that to help you tap into your intuition. And that, I think, was the biggest game changer for me, because that part of my brain that still wanted evidence, even though I knew I was intuitive, even though I understood cognitively that we're all intuitive beings, even though I'd had many incredible experiences with my intuition, I just pushed them aside and said they were coincidences or luck, or all of the excuses that we come up with for, you know, to explain away our intuition, because, you know, what if we were really that powerful? What would we then do with that power? And yeah, that was really the thing for me. I think it satisfied that scientific part of my brain that wanted to know the how, that wanted to understand, you know, at a deeper level, at a microscopic level, what was going on. And although, you know, these are just theories, all of science is theories. These are just theories, and they're still working on, you know, evidence base around it. I don't need that. I don't need that. I just needed to understand the how to be able to make that connection really get in sync for me. And since then, it's just been on. I work with it every day. And like you, I also work with it in my business. My business has always been very intuitive. And anytime I've deviated from that and followed somebody else's way, I've been very clearly reminded to just get back on my own track.
Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane.
Exactly. So, and it makes such a difference because business is so much more fun. It may not make sense from the outside looking in, but looking back, everything is like it makes perfect sense. They're all perfect steps in line to the thing you were heading towards that you had no idea that's where you were going.
Gosh, I resisted my first podcast so much, and now it makes so much sense. It's the same. I was like arguing with my guides saying, you know, who on earth launches a podcast when they work 1 day a week in their business? I said, like, give me one person who does that. No one. So I resisted. And yet, looking back, I could see it was an amazing thing. This podcast wouldn't exist if I hadn't done my previous one. So there you go. Yeah,
it's so true.
Powerful.
And I loved your previous podcast. That was a beautiful podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, I still have a lot of fondness for it. Yeah, I loved bringing that high vibe to people and inspire them on their journey of entrepreneurship, because let's face it, it's a roller coaster. It really is. But now we've got intuition as our, you know, kind of sat nav thing, and we can get there with maybe a few less bumps and a bit more of the laughing on the roller coaster rather than the crying. Right, Katie. And I want to read that book, by the way, Emma, but I have like 10 books on the go already. So I'm going to have to stop myself from buying it just yet.
Hi everybody.
Can I just say one Katie, sorry. Claire Valentine Gibson's watching, and she says, I get this, the how. I'm a scientist too by training and an artist by nature. So thank you for that, Emma. All right, Katie, sorry.
That's totally fine. So I feel like my story with intuition is very different from everybody else's here, because I am the baby. I am still taking like my first steps into intuition, or at least into accepting and embracing and really like deeply exploring my intuition. So, I mean, I grew up in a family where there was no sort of right or wrong. It was like I had a really good childhood. It was really easy. My mom was really spiritual and we talked about that stuff, but it was not forced on us. She was very much, you decide for yourself. And it was just kind of, there was never any thought about it. There was no thought about you have to be this way or you shouldn't do this. It was actually just really sort of, you know, we figured it out for ourselves. And I went into vet nursing when I was straight out of high school, however old you are, 18, I think, which is, you know, obviously very sciencey and doing things like anesthesia and in surgery. And it was great. And I loved it. But there's a lot of things in the moment. I can tell you, I didn't have any intuition, any awareness of my intuition in my life. I had no awareness that it was even there. And in my late 20s, I ended up moving from Canada to Australia and, you know, started a new relationship. I became a coach. And again, there was no like awareness of, I have to do this, a knowing. It was all logical for me. I want a career where I'm helping people and I can, you know, live anywhere and I can travel while I'm doing it. And it's only, I kid you not, it was a few months ago when Ange approached me to be a guest on the podcast. And I went, I can't be a guest on your podcast. I'm not intuitive. And she laughed and she, I'm sure you remember the conversation.
Yeah.
And you said, yes, you are. I said, no, I can't be a guest. And I sort of went away and came back and we had a couple other little chats about it. And I sort of realized I am intuitive, but I haven't either realized it or when it's come up, I haven't trusted it, which I think everybody goes through, right? It's part of the journey. So I've definitely had a couple in hindsight, and I've had a couple instances where I've maybe made investments that my head said yes and everything else screamed no, but I did it anyway because my head said yes and it didn't work out for the best. And, you know, got into relationships again, same thing, where something about it was right and something about it was wrong. But I just ignored that little bit that said, don't do it. And I did it anyways. And it's even just in the last couple of weeks, I'm going through a lot of changes in my personal life. And there's been quite a few instances where I've just had a knowing, don't do this, don't make this step, don't do this thing, or do this thing. This is the right step. And it hasn't logically made any sense, but I've done it and it feels good and it feels right. So so I'm very much just, creeping into the intuition. And because of that, I'd say I don't actually have a book. So I fail at your homework task. I'm sorry.
Oh, come on.
But no, I don't have a book. What has impacted me the most is my day-to-day interactions with people. So it hasn't been the written word. It's been speaking, like Anja's been speaking to you, listening to your previous podcast, speaking to other people. I know I've had a coaching session with Andrea. Like we talked a lot about intuition during that session. It's really just my interactions with people has sort of opened me up. So there's not sort of a book specifically to
That's
this point. I'm
absolutely
sure there will
fine.
be.
And there'll be a lot of people who relate to you. By the way, we love babies. It's like, I think it's important to say it, that there is no superiority from someone who's followed their intuition for their whole life and some are just starting. It actually takes a lot more courage to take that tiny step, to open your mind when you're at a point where it's never been something familiar, that it's never been something that you've used before. It takes so much courage, and I want to acknowledge that courage in you, Katie, because it's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. And I hope that there'll be many people listening to the podcast who will feel like you, who can relate to you, and who will feel part of the club. Because I think we discussed this with Emma. I don't know if it was offline or online or in the podcast, is that I used to feel that there was this club, this exclusive club of psychics, and I was definitely not a part of it. And so I felt left out in the cold. So on the one hand, I had the scientists, on the other hand, the fluffy unicorns, as I like to call them, with all my, a lot of, compassion and also love for them. But I just didn't fit in either of them. And I want to create that space in between for people who are ready to explore with no dogma, with no preconceived notion, with no rules other than your rule. What works for you? For me, it's always been very experimental. If it works, I'm going to do it again. If it doesn't work, I'm not doing it. It doesn't matter if so-and-so psychic said, this is the way. I'm like, no. This is my way. Because intuition is about your way. It's about your life, your way to navigate life. And every single way is as potent and as valid as anybody else's. So whatever I say, I used to teach Reiki as a Reiki master. I always said to my student, and I want everybody to know that as well for this podcast or anything that I ever say, take what resonates with you, leave the rest. It's always about taking what feels right and honoring that intuition. Even with intuition, you have to use your own intuition to kind of validate it and say, does it feel right? Should it be now? Ask more questions, be curious. You talk a lot about curiosity, Katie, don't you?
Yeah, curiosity is the key to everything, I think. Yeah, definitely.
So I want to thank you for actually accepting the invitation and for acknowledging since how intuitive you are, because I think you're going to inspire a lot of people as well. All of you
Thank
will.
you.
I know that, but particularly our baby here. Because she called herself the baby, and I don't want her to feel like, and this is really, really, babies are actually the most intuitive beings, and then it's knocked out of them through life, through education and everything. So being a baby is awesome.
Yeah, and I like what you said though, there's room for all of us, whether you see yourself as intuitive or not. We all have it, and it's just a safe place to explore it. Yeah.
My 4 children taught me more about intuition than anybody else and any person that teaches intuition in the entire world. They were my best teachers. They taught me everything I needed. It's just, so I want to honor as well the next generation, the younger generation, because their intuition is so often discarded. And, I homeschool my kids, as you know, but people who watch might not know. And so, but I let them lead the way. And if they say, I already know this, I won't push it. I'm like, okay, I respect it. Even though you haven't formally learned it with me, if you know it, I'm not going to bore you because it's on the curriculum and you have to do this. And someone said you have to do this after this, after this. And it makes actually education so much more joyful. It's so much fun. Okay, so no book for Katie. I'm going to just write it down here and we'll just have to have a chat with this after the call.
I've got plenty, Katie. If you want to borrow some books, I've got a whole heap.
Okay, Emma, give her one book.
For sure. Give me your recommendations.
Yeah, let's do this.
A really good starting book that I really love. Do you want to start a book? The one that I really loved was Light is the New Black by Rebecca Campbell. And it's a really easy bite-sized chunk type book, and it gives you, soul inquiries and ways to really deepen into you and deepen into what you're hearing as well. It's a beautiful starter book if you want to go into it, and it's just, it's a nice place to start, and it's a really beautifully written, easy to read, really easy to read.
And I love her Oracle deck. It's amazing.
Oh, me too. I've got both of them now.
I'm the one I'm thinking is the one that's like pale pink and blue. What's it called?
Yeah, they're both pale pink and blue. But there's Work Your Light, Work Your Light Oracle, and the Starseed Oracle is her new one.
No, it's the Work Your Light. I think it's really beautiful. Gentle, really beautiful for anybody starting off. Okay, I have where can we get a copy, please? Ida says. Are we talking about books, Ida? Because if it's the case, I will post this video on YouTube, probably with the links to all the books, right? I can't really do, or I might do it at the top of this video as well on my page. Right, so let's see if we have anything else to cover. Of course we do. We have a party starting this week and it's going to last for 8 days. How amazing is that? It's going to be so much fun. So I'm going to tell you first what you can win if you take part in the party, in the podcast crew. And I want all my guests on the podcast to know that they can take part in the competitions too if they want to. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to win one of my courses or a free session with me or a month in my Business Intuition Academy. So every single day from the day when the podcast goes live, and at the time of that we speak, it's not live yet because I messed up a bit. In Libsyn, there was this weird thing. I thought I'd published my episode and I hadn't. And then I wondered why Apple wasn't approving my podcast. So all been put right this morning. And so we're going to talk day 1, day 2, day 3 until day 8, rather than in like the 14th of June. So when the podcast goes live, and that's why it's so important to actually sign up for the newsletter. So I'm going to grab the link and share it under the video, because that's when I will send an email to the entire list to say the podcast is live, go and listen to it, okay? So let me just grab the link whilst I have it. Here we go. Oh, actually, I prefer to share, there's a specific page on my website because it will remind you of all the, the prizes that you can win, all the sorts of things, what the podcast is about. There's a lot of information there. Right, so first let me find my page so I can share it under the video. I'm not doing too bad with technology considering I'm a tech granny today. So here we go. Let's put the, right. So on day 1, we have 2 episodes that are released in addition to the trailer. The first episode, and some of you who've listened to my old podcast will recognize these episodes, but I thought they were so important that they needed to be put on the new podcast. So the first episode is how to recognize the signs from the universe, because that's something that when you start on your intuitive journey is super important, how to recognize the signs. And then the second one is what if businesses had souls? Because I also think this is super important in understanding how to use intuition within your business. And they have souls whether you're a solopreneur or not. It doesn't matter if you're the face of your business. Your business has a separate soul from you. And I'll explore that in more depth in the podcast. But I was super excited when I read Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, because she talks about that with books. And I think it's exactly the same with businesses. So that might be my book, Big Magic. Go and read that book. It's amazing. In it, I don't want to spoil it for you, but in it, she shares the story of how she started writing a book and then she decided not to finish it Great one, Emma. Thank you. And literally, she met another author that she hugged, and she was like really in awe of that other author. And literally, that author started writing the book that she stopped writing because she wasn't interested in it. And she believed that she transmitted the book from her to the other person. It's just amazing, that story. I just love it. But I got excited as well because someone out there validated that concept. Because when I was a book coach, I used to literally download people's books. And I can talk about it a little bit because you had a couple of sessions with me with your book. I can literally download your book from start to finish, all the chapters and everything, the structure, because I can talk to the energy of your book and I can communicate. I get book titles, I get even book covers. So it's kind of fun, but the same goes for your business. So let me add Big Magic into the list. It wasn't the book I was going to share, but actually it's perfect. I might share the other book if I feel like it, but I don't want more than one book each because I don't want, it's going to be overwhelming otherwise. Right, so what's happening is on day one, when the thing goes live, there's these 2 episodes that are solo episodes for me, and we have our first guest, and who's called Anna Parker Naples, who has been instrumental in helping me relaunch my podcast or launch this new podcast. She has an amazing story. I'm going to share a little bit of the start, but not all of it, so that you just have the taster and want to go and listen to the episode. She, after the birth of her 3rd baby, sadly, she had a condition that meant that she had to be in a wheelchair and she could no longer walk. And she was an actress, and that devastated her. Obviously she went through a very dark period, and then someone suggested, well, why don't you use your voice and be a voice actress? You can still do that. So they reconditioned an airing cupboard on the ground floor of her house. That's the only place where she could put her wheelchair through. She created a little audio studio where she would record all the audiobooks, and she did gaming, all sorts of things. And she became an award-winning voice actress. And she went to Hollywood to receive her awards. Not only that, she was able to walk by then because she trained in NLP, and she managed to walk again. So she was on her feet on the red carpet in Hollywood receiving her award as a voice actress. And that was when she received her intuition. And I'm going to leave the rest to you to go and find out on the podcast, because I'm getting goosebumps when I'm talking about it. This is a phenomenal story. So that's our first guest. Every single guest, we have 11 guests, 4 of you here right now. Nicola was with us earlier. And of course, obviously, a lot more. They all have an amazing story to share, a story that will inspire you. And you know how stories are so important? This is the focus of these interviews. If we all shared us, and the reason why I got to this point is because I've been running a 5-day challenge, which is my signature challenge. I haven't done it actually since January because I've been focusing completely on the podcast. But the highlight, the strong moment in the challenge is day 2, when people start sharing their stories of intuition, because then it kind of triggers something in other people, and it's like, oh yes, I had this and I had this. We all forget our stories of intuition. We forget them because I think our brain can't take it. It's not normal. It's kind of, out there, it's uncomfortable. So we just push it aside. And we just go back to our normal ways. With anything that's extraordinary, anything that's a bit magical, we always normalize it, or we rationalize it, or we even talk ourselves out of it. Nothing happened. Like Emma, you did that with the extraordinary story that you shared. So go and check Emma's episode as well. This is going to be phenomenal for people to realize that she had this amazing, and I'm not going to say what it was, she had this amazing moment, that this mind-blowing realization, and yet after it happened, she pretended nothing had happened and went on with her life, like me with the bomb attempt. Nothing came from it, absolutely nothing. But that's also because I didn't have the support that I needed to be able to unpack it and to open up to this, and Emma didn't, and I'm sure a lot of you didn't, and that's what we're offering, the community of people who are going to listen to this podcast. This support, this, like big sister kind of help, We're here for you. We want to mentor you. We want to support you. We want to love you. We want to encourage you and nurture that little seed that's in you, that was planted in you when you were born, and nobody's watered it for you. So let's go and water that seed. Let's make it grow into this beautiful plant of intuition that is going to make your life amazing, with fruits that are so sweet and so tasty that you will never want to go back to just using half of your brain. Does that make sense? Oh gosh, I'm so excited. Right, so I talked only about my first guest, but so after the first day, let's call it day one, when I will send this email to everyone who signed up to let them know when the podcast goes live, we have 2 guests per day, right? And every day we have a different prize for day. And I'm not going to go through all the details because you can find it on the link that I shared underneath this video. But what I want to say, though, is that for the day one, it's going to be my Tarot for Business course. It's a self-study course. It's super fun, and it will teach you how to use a Rider-Waite deck, a traditional tarot deck, to make decisions in your business without having to learn the meaning of all 78 cards. You don't have to get into that. You can use it as a tool to tune into your intuition, and it's amazing because it will enable you not to bypass your mind, but sort of like soothe your mind a little bit. You know how the mind kind of comes in to try and jinx your intuition? It's like the 5-second rule. I love that book because of that. I really link intuition and inspiration. And so if it's something that scares you, within 5 seconds, your mind is going to try and destroy it. It's almost like this target, target on sight, boom, boom, boom. So so we want to honor that very first thought, the thought that we had without thinking. Because for me, intuition is intelligence without thinking. And yet it makes complete sense. When you get that information, when it lands, it does make sense in the craziest of ways, doesn't it? Okay, Emma, that's fine. If you have to go, I understand. Thank you so much for being here. It was supposed to be only an hour, so I'm going to try and wrap up really quickly so that I can release my guests. Thank you for coming.
I'm going to run to go pick up my son. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the podcast. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, and I wanted to say as well, but that's not for the guests here today, because you've all been on the podcast. There's going to be an episode up for grabs, the last one of the year. Bye, Emma. Thank you so much. I only have 1 spot left this year in December. All my guests are planned out for the year because I only have 1 guest every 4 weeks. But I have kept 1 episode for people who want to share their stories of intuition with the hashtag business intuition on social media, and either tag me or send me a screenshot or a link to that post so that we can put you in the competition. And at the end of the week, I'll draw the winner of the person who is going to be on the podcast. So what else do I want to say? So yes, there's going to be 2 guests per day, and you will be informed when the episode goes live through the newsletter. Obviously, the guests will know as well, and they'll be able to share with their community. Have I missed anything? Can you think of anything I should say before we wrap up? No, I think I've said it all. Yeah, it's going to be fun. That's all I can say. And the prizes are amazing. So I'm just going to talk about the prizes a little bit. There's my Tarot for Business. There's my Get Started with Your Book, which is a course that has helped so many people finish their first draft, which is amazing. Most people start books they never finish. And it's not even that many people who start their book to start with. And it sets the foundation of your writing journey by connecting you to the energy of your book. There's a course called The First 8 Weeks of the Slim Soul, based on my first book, which is about making friends with food and your body so that you can be more visible in your business. That is a super important part of I wasn't going to say my past, but I've written the book. It's still there. It's still part of my passion, even though Katie has taken on that mission so beautifully. So go and listen to Katie as well. She has a lot of things to say about self-love and self-acceptance. There's going to be my Prosperity Booster, which is one of my favorite, manifesting courses. I have studied the law of attraction for over 20 years. Actually, to start with, I bought Ask and It Is Given by Esther Hicks, because everybody was talking about it. It was on every single spiritual, shelf in bookshelves. And it took me 10 years to go past chapter 1. it was so alien and so bizarre and so against everything I'd been taught about money and manifestation that I just couldn't go past chapter 1. But once I did, oh my God, was I keen on learning? And it's completely transformed my relationship to money, abundance, prosperity, but also about owning your desires. Because when I was a kid, if I asked for something, it was almost a guarantee I wouldn't get it because I had asked for it, and that was wrong. I was just given what I was given, and I had to be happy with it. So I had to unpeel all these layers of this horrible onion around wanting things, around desire, around money. And my course is like a 30-day daily prompt, little nudges to heal your relationship to money. There's even a point where you write a love letter to your money. And I've had ladies manifest cars, houses, thousands of pounds during COVID, because that's when I run it. I run it last year in the middle of COVID. So I'm very, very fond of this course. And I feel that for women in business, having that prosperity is the thing that enables you to feel relaxed, to be able to treat yourself, and also to be able to have an impact, to be able to, create that ripple effect and maybe give back because you're a place of having a full cup and being able to give. So that's a very, very important. It's also one of the pillars of my framework, but I'm not going to go into that because I don't want this thing to be too long. So there's going to be also, I have 5 self-study courses. Let me try to remember if I can remember them all. Did I say 3 of them or 4? 4. I think there's one more. Well, you can find out on the link, okay? Because I'm not going to scratch my head trying to find the last one. Oh, yes. No. It is energy intelligence for empathic and sensitive entrepreneurs. That's also one of my big babies, because we've talked about how sensitive we are, how we can be affected by energies. And this is to help women in business who are particularly sensitive to manage their energy so they're not drained by their clients, especially if they work with clients who have a lot of issues, and also so that they can be energized by their business. So I think that's really big for me. Then there'll be a half-hour Business Akashic Record session with me for grabs, and 2 spots in my Business Intuition Academy. So I think I'm going to close here because I don't want to overwhelm people with too much, but you can check the link under this video on my page, and wherever I'll share it on social media, you will have the link to sign up as well. I want to thank Chantal, Andrea, and Katie for coming live, and obviously Nick and Emma. Does any of you, just a minute, Ivanka says, what is this book's name? But all the books and the links will be given under either this video or wherever I repost this with a proper thing. Do any one of you 3 want to say one final word before we leave our guests? Maybe about what would you say to someone who's sitting on the fence about listening to the podcast or using their intuition?
As the baby,
Yeah.
I would just like to say, don't be afraid of it, because I think that a lot of people are really afraid of their intuition because there's this idea that you're gonna have to turn off your logic, and that you're not allowed to use your logical brain if you're intuitive. But as I am very slowly sort of stepping into this new way of being, what I'm experiencing is that it's actually a beautiful marriage of the two. And it's not an either or, it's a both. And it's just like this really beautiful tool in your personal life and in your business. So if you have any fear around intuition, you don't really need to. It's okay. It's a safe space. That's all I'd say.
I love what you say. Can I add just a very small thing around this? It's because I believe that until you embrace your intuition fully, you're more likely to get the negative intuition rather than the positive. And that's because of the way we tend to think. So if you remember, my story is about something incredibly negative, but it's actually incredibly positive because I'm still here to tell the story. But of course, if you get those sort of hits, luckily, and this is something I really want to say, I'm all for setting an intention for your intuition. And I will talk about this a lot more on the podcast because I wasn't shown the bomb attempt. I was just made feel to go home and not want to go, which was perfect. Now there was a confirmation afterwards, but I didn't have to be scared. But even if you were shown something negative, like you were, Chantal, usually it comes with a sense of calm and a sense of purpose. But if it doesn't, and I know that's going to put a lot of people off, and I've met so many psychics who had really disturbing occurrences where they were showing something they didn't see and that it was pointless. I'm going to share that one example because I did an open day in my village when I was still doing in-person events, and I invited the whole people to come and chat about Reiki, intuition, whatever. And there's this beautiful lady who came to the open day, and she shared the story of how when she was 18, her best friend dragged her to see a psychic. And there's no judgment here in sharing the story, but I want to share this story. It's super important. And what happened is her friend had the reading first, and this lady didn't want a reading, but she was there in the room with her friend. And the psychic basically said to her friend, I can't see anything. You have no future. I really can't see anything. And she sent them their way. And her friend died in a car accident that night. And she was totally traumatized by that experience. And I said to her, no wonder you were. And I'm not judging the psychic, because I believe that actually everybody who comes with these gifts, who hone these gifts, should have counseling skills with it, so that they know they have a filter of, is it useful? Is it inspiring? And should I really say, question what you get? But this is for psychics. We're talking about intuition here. But no wonder all these things are very often related to negative things, because that's the old ways in a way. You know how all these prophecies and all these psychics go on TV to tell, you know, what's going to happen this year, what kind of disaster, all that sort of thing. We need to move it into the positive space, where it's literally something that can guide you to your best life, like Andrea said, right? Anybody wants to add to this?
Can I just add, I just want to quickly add, so for me, if we can open up to the fact that there are no mistakes, so therefore we can't get anything wrong. And I know that that can be a really big leap for people, especially when the situations might bring pain. But so in terms of trusting your intuition, or in terms of dealing with what would be perceived as a negative feedback, what happens if they're not wrong though? That there is no mistakes, that everything that is working in somehow for our good.
True. No, I agree with that.
It's that's not okay, that's wrong, that creates the suffering. There's a difference between pain and suffering as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
The suffering is resisting that it should have happened or played out that way.
I agree.
So, and that, therefore, what Katie was saying before, in terms of your intuition, and it can be a bit, you know, how do you trust it and stuff? Well, if you can't get it wrong, because even if you follow it and it takes you to an experience of not feeling great, you'll have learned something on the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much for your pearl of wisdom. Chantal?
I was just thinking, if you don't give it a go, you'll never know. So I think it's like with anything, it's trusting, stepping into the unknown, and that's the hard bit, and then having faith with that. And I think it's, even if you don't want to use intuition, I just use it in a heart, you know, go to your heart, your inner wisdom, yourself, and just be with that. So give it a go, because like Andrea said, you can't go wrong with it, and there's no judgment around it. And it's the most exquisite place to be in. I hold both spaces now, the doing and the being, and they overlap and they separate, they overlap and they separate. And I've created this wholeness in myself that I never expected to have in this way. So give it a go.
Yeah, and I call this intuitive intelligence. Intuition comes on top of knowledge and intelligence and magnifies it. You know, it's the whole concept of Einstein saying, you know, the mind should be the servant of the intuition, but that's because the intuition comes on top of the mind and just opens up an incredibly bigger world. Right. Thank you so much, ladies, for coming to this live party. I love you so much. Listening to your interviews and creating all the quotes that I'm going to share on social media has been such a pleasure and an honor. And of course, everybody can find you on the show notes. They're not ready yet. We have a bit of a glitch on the website, but they're definitely going to be ready in time, if not on time, or whatever. Is it the other way around? On time, if not in time. God knows. That's the English bit. But baffles me. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Thank you, Dee, for saying you loved the discussion. I loved it so much. And let's just get this intuition revolution going. Let's go.
Thanks, Ange. Thanks so much for everything. Okay. Bye.